So my dad and I are reminiscing today. We are visiting our hometown of Gilmer, Texas. Dad, can you say hi?
Hello.
And we're visiting my childhood home, and we're on Ash Road, where I grew up. And how many years did we live here, Dad?
40.
40 years. We moved in when I was in, 83? I was in second.
1980.
Yeah, third grade, I think. Second or third grade. Anyway, well, we have a family story that we always love to reminisce about. When Gigi was in my junior year of high school, and I was grounded from my car because I was speeding in my car, my Grand Am, and I was grounded from my Grand Am, and I was driving my dad's old red, his pickup truck, and I was driving it to early morning seminary, in the morning, and I had Brian with me, and it was 6:30 in the morning, and we were running late. Here comes the truck. We were going down this road, and there used to be a lot of trees right here, didn't there?
Yep,
It was all trees, wasn't it?
Yep.
The entire time. This truck's coming. Anyway, so that morning I was driving, and there were newspapers all in the bed of the truck that Dad liked to leave. And Brian and I started arguing about somebody needed to pick up the newspapers, and he didn't want to pick them up, so I bent down to pick them up. Let the truck pass. And we were all the way up, a little bit further down there, if you can see. And as I bent down to pick them up in my anger, I started losing control of the truck, of Dad's truck. And I lost control, and we started bouncing and bouncing in this ditch. Bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. And we crashed and hit a big tree that was right here and landed sideways, and we totaled my dad's truck. And we were laying sideways, and my brother, I couldn't hear him. There was dust and dirt coming out of the AC vents, and I was yelling for my brother, and I couldn't hear him because my ears were ringing. I had knocked off the rearview mirror of my dad's truck. And anyway, so my brother finally he yelled at me for me to shut up. He was so mad at me, and he pushed me out. He had to push me out of the window. It was broken, and we were able to get out of the truck. And the neighbors who live right here, they were the shadows at the time. Anyway, so they came out, and they were helping us. My brother was bleeding, I was bleeding, and I'd hurt my arm, my head, and he was hurt. But we were okay overall. But during that time, they went in the house to call my dad to get him. I decided we needed to make up a story because I knew I was in big trouble.
Not the truth.
Not the truth. So I decided, Brian, we need to tell Dad that there was a deer that had come in front of the truck. And so we decided to tell Dad that there was a deer that had come in front of the truck. And so Mom and Dad came down. They were all worried about us, weren't y'all?
Of course.
Yes. And they got us back to the house, and then Brian had to go. Didn't he have to go to the hospital and he had to get something. We both had to go to the hospital, I think, to get checked out. I had my arm in a sling, I know that, but I think somebody had to go and get checked out. Brian went on to school, but I stayed home because I remember my arm was messed up. I was in a sling, and Dad came home at lunch because Dad had time to process it, and he thought the story was fishy. So I was laying on the couch thinking, well, maybe I got away with this one. I don't know. And he said, how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? And I'm like, yeah, my arm's sore, but I think I'm okay. And he said, why don't you get in the car with me for a minute? Let's go for a drive. And I thought, oh gosh. And so we got in the car, and we drove down this road, and we came down to the crash site. And he said, why don't you get out for a minute? So we got out of the car, and I'm starting to sweat. And I'm like, oh geez, this is not good. And then he starts looking. He starts walking around and looking all over this old top road. And he said, can you show me where some tread marks might be where you slammed on the brakes to steer away from this deer? I start looking so
She
hard.
looked so hard.
I mean, I was searching high and low, looking for any possibility for any brake marks where I would have slammed on the brakes to avoid the deer. Nada, nothing.
No brakes. No brake marks.
You remember what I did? We just stood there. We just looked at each other. And then I started crying. And Dad said, "There weren't any deer, were there?" Wasn't a deer, was there? I said, "No, there wasn't a
Caught
deer.
her.
There wasn't a deer." I lied.
The only time she ever lied.
He said, "You learned your lesson, didn't you?" I said, "Yes. I'm sorry. I totaled your truck." Brian and I were fighting over the newspapers and he wouldn't pick them up. And I got mad. So I let go of the wheel and I started picking them up. And then the truck just started bouncing in the ditch and I couldn't stop it. Anyway, so that's the story of the deer and the big red truck and how I totaled it my junior year after I was already grounded from my car.
Don't
Memories.
ride with G.
Don't ride with Gigi. Memories on Ash Road we'll always cherish.